Before we begin, I would like to apologize for my voice today. Uh, I have a bit of a cold, so hence the voice quality may not be the most appropriate. So, anyways, let's just begin. So, my question this time is: did quantum physics come from the Vedas? Quantum physics explains the nature and behavior of matter and energy on the atomic and subatomic level, and began with a number of different scientific discoveries from the 1838 discovery of cathode rays to the quantum hypothesis and photoelectric effect. The term quantum mechanics was coined in the early 1920s by a group of physicists at the University of Göttingen. In the 1920s, quantum mechanics was created by three great minds: Werner Heisenberg, Niels Bohr, and Erwin Schrödinger, who all read from and greatly respected the Vedas, the ancient Indian Sanskrit text on spirituality. They elaborated upon these ancient books of wisdom in their own language and with modern mathematical formulas in order to try and understand the ideas that are to be found throughout the Vedas, referred to as in the ancient Sanskrit as Brahman, Paramatma, Akasha, and Atma. As Schrödinger said, some blood transfusion from the east to the west to save Western science from spiritual anemia. Turning to the Vedas for answers. The famous Danish physicist and Nobel Prize winner Niels Bohr was a follower of Vedas. He said, I go into the Upanishads to ask questions. Both Bohr and Schrödinger were avid readers of the Vedic texts and observed that their experiments in quantum physics were consistent with what they had read in the Vedas. Niels Bohr got the ball rolling around 1900 by explaining why atoms emit and absorb electromagnetic radiation only at certain frequencies. Then in 1920s, Erwin Schrödinger, an Austrian-Irish physicist who won the Nobel Prize, came up with this famous wave equation that predicts how the quantum mechanical wave function changes with time. Wave functions are used in quantum mechanics to determine how particles move and interact with time. In the 1920s, Werner Heisenberg formulated his famous uncertainty principle, which states that when a physicist attempts to observe a subatomic particle, the experimental apparatus inevitably alters the subatomic particle's trajectory. This is because they are trying to observe something that is of the same scale as the photons they are using to observe it. To be more specific, to observe something that is subatomic in size, one must use a device that projects photons at the particle being observed. This is because the reception of photons by our retina is what we call vision. Basically, to observe something, we must bounce photons off it. The problem is that the photons disturb the subatomic particles because they are of the same size when they are bounced off. Thus, there is no way to observe subatomic particles without altering their trajectories. Bohr, Heisenberg, and Schrödinger regularly read Vedic texts. Heisenberg stated, quantum theory will not look ridiculous to people who have read Vedanta. Vedanta is the conclusion of Vedic thought. Furthermore, Fritjof Capra, when interviewed by Rene Weber in the book The Holographic Paradigm, page 217-218, stated that Schrödinger, in speaking about Heisenberg, has said, I had several discussions with Heisenberg. I lived in England then, circa 1972, and I visited him several times in Munich and showed him the whole manuscript chapter by chapter. He was very interested and very open, and he told me something that I think is not known publicly because he never published it. He said that he was well aware of these parallels. While he was working on quantum theory, he went to India to lecture and was a guest of Tagore, the Nobel Prize winner. He talked a lot with Tagore about Indian philosophy. Heisenberg told me that these talks had helped him a lot with his work in physics because they showed him that all these new ideas in quantum physics were in fact not all that crazy. He realized there was in fact a whole culture that subscribed to very similar ideas. Heisenberg said that this was a great help for him. The life of yours which you are living is not merely a piece of this entire existence, but in a certain sense, the whole. Only this whole is not so constituted that it can be surveyed in one single glance. This, as we know, is what the Brahmins expressed in that sacred mystic formula, which is yet really so simple and so clear. Tat Tvam Asi. This is you. Or again, in such words as I am in the east and the west, I am above and below, I am this entire world. This is the quote by Schrödinger. The only solution lies in the Upanishad. Schrödinger, in speaking of a universe in which particles are represented by wave functions, said the unity and continuity of Vedanta are reflected in unity and continuity of wave mechanics. This is entirely consistent with the Vedanta concept of all in one. The multiplicity is only apparent. This is the doctrine of the Upanishads and not of the Upanishads only. The mystical experience of the union with the God regularly leads to this view. Unless strong prejudices stand in the West, there is no kind of framework within which we can find consciousness in the plural. This is simply something we construct because of the temporal polarity of individuals, but it is a false construction. The only solution to this conflict, in so far as any is available to us at all, lies in the ancient wisdom of the Upanishads. These are Schrödinger's quote about Upanishads. In 1925, the worldview of physics was a model of the universe as a great machine composed of separable interacting material particles. During the next few years, Schrödinger and Heisenberg and their followers created a universe based on superimposed inseparable waves of probability amplitudes. This new view would be entirely consistent with the Vedantic concept of the all-in-one. Quoted from Schrödinger, Life and Thought, Mind Weltanschauung, page 173. No multiplicity of selves. In Schrödinger's famous essay on determinism and free will, he expressed really clearly the sense that consciousness is a unity, arguing that this insight is not new. From the early great Upanishads, the recognition Atma is equal to Brahman, the personal self equals the omnipresent, all-comprehending eternal self, was an Indian thought considered far from being blasphemous to represent. The quintessence of deepest insight into the happiness of the world, the striving of all the scholars of Vedanta was, after having learned to pronounce with their lips, really to assimilate in their minds this grandest of all thoughts. According to Moore, on page 125 of his biographical work, Life of Erwin Schrödinger, Schrödinger found Vedanta teaches that consciousness is singular. All happenings are played out in one universal consciousness, and there is no multiplicity of selves. The stages of human development are to strive for possession, arth, knowledge, dharma, ability, calm, and being, moksha. Nirvana is a state of pure blissful knowledge. It has nothing to do with the individual. The ego or its separation is an illusion. The goal of a man is to preserve his karma and to develop it further. When man dies, his karma lives and creates for itself another carrier. The above quote clearly demonstrates Schrödinger's firm belief in reincarnation. In 1935, Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen challenged quantum physics on the grounds that it was an incomplete formulation. They were the first authors to recognize that quantum mechanics is inherently non-local, which means it allows for instantaneous action across arbitrarily great distances. So an action in one place can instantly influence something on the other side of the universe in no time at all. This is a very powerful paper. The EPR paper, explaining quantum entanglement, changed the world and alerted us to magical implications of quantum mechanics, metaphysical implications. This quantum entanglement I will discuss in a lot of detail in another video, and what I think could be the principle behind teleportation. Reading further. Albert Einstein regularly read the Bhagavad Gita. When I read the Bhagavad Gita and reflect about how God created this universe, everything else seems to be so superfluous. I maintain that cosmic religious feeling is the strongest and the noblest motive for scientific research. Physics have not yet ascertained whether Bohr and company or Einstein and company are right. One thing that all this materialistic research has done is open up the doors for the world to look deeper into the validity of the Vedas. For it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, a mundaner is sure to commit mistakes, is invariably illusioned, has a tendency to cheat others, and is limited by imperfect senses. With these four imperfections, one cannot deliver perfect information or all pervading knowledge. So, no matter how many experiments are conducted, we can never come to the absolute truth using imperfect instruments of perception, even if we have a super brain like Einstein or Schrödinger. For our minds, thoughts, and power of intelligence only works on the platform of the time and space, and are rendered defective from being subject to the four defects that the Bhagavad Gita mentions. Scientists like Schrödinger did not possess a direct knowledge of Sanskrit to discern firsthand what the Vedic text actually was saying. They were forced to read various translations of these great books of wisdom, such as the Upanishads. There are persons like Robert Oppenheimer who learned Sanskrit in 1933 and read the Bhagavad Gita in the original, citing it later as one of the most influential books to shape his philosophy of life. The Vedas are the greatest privilege of this century. Upon witnessing the world's first nuclear test in 1945, he instantly quoted Bhagavad Gita, chapter 11, text 32. Now I am become death, the destroyer of the worlds. Vedic texts such as Bhagavad Gita and Upanishads were collectively considered the most influential books ever written by eminent people like Thoreau, Kant, Schopenhauer, Schrödinger, Werner Heisenberg, Tesla, Einstein, etc. Irrespective of East or West, great minds that come in contact with the Vedic texts agree that the ultimate reality remains timeless and changeless and is contained in the Vedic texts such as Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads. 300 years before quantum mechanics, Sir Isaac Newton came up with the classical mechanics, which describes very basic action and reaction. Newton's entire work in physics and calculation was taken wholesale from the Vedas and the Kerala Book of Calculus. It was simply taken from the Vedas and where it was originally used for calculating rates of change in astronomy and astrology for many thousands of years before Newton. Another genius scientist was Nikola Tesla. Along with the others mentioned above, he knew that the ancient Indian Brahmins, wise men who were well equipped with the knowledge from the Vedas, had understanding of the intricate laws, mathematical formulas, and subtle working of the universe that far surpass anything we can even imagine today. It is uncertain how Nikola Tesla was introduced to the Vedas. Much of Tesla's life and work has been erased from the history due to this mastermind, inventor, and scientist wanting to make the fruits of all of his work available for free to the world. Google Free Energy Tesla, and your mind will be truly blown away. Unfortunately for us, because he was not trying to use his genius for profiteering and exploiting others, he was met with one setback after another. His grants and funding were constantly being revoked by those that control the economy and trade. Nikola Tesla originally invented many things that we all use on a daily basis, but most of people have never been heard of him because his name was removed from common history, just like much of the teachings of the Vedas, and he was eventually murdered. Tesla understood the great power of zero-point field or Akash or ether, the power of space between the electrons and the nucleus. Vedanta's effect on Tesla was so great that he became vegetarian, celibate, and started using Sanskrit words. He died with scalar energy science in his head because he did not want the US military to use it to destroy the planet. No wonder he was denied the Nobel Prize and eventually killed. Knowledge is power, and there are many people that want all the power for themselves. A simple fact that will surprise you and acknowledge how much knowledge lies in the ancient Vedas is the fact that Saturn was discovered by Galileo Galilei, as is referred to in modern history and how the modern historians believe it, in 1610. So 1610 is what we believe was the time when Saturn was discovered. However, in Vedic astrology, we have been worshipping the 9 planets or the Navgrahas for a very long time, and the origins of Vedic astrology date back to around 5000 or 10,000 BC and is not known for certain. So how come if Saturn was discovered only in 1610, the ancient Vedic practitioners knew about its presence and were worshipping it more than 3000 to 4000 years earlier than that? find that mind-boggling. Also, all this is just a fact and has been taken a lot from one of the links that I've mentioned in the description below. So please check that link out and show that guy a love, because a lot of hard work has been done by him. And most importantly, all this is just a proof of a concept that I have mentioned in one of my previous videos, that why we need to study black magic if we need to discover and evolve more into the study of the mind and telepathy. This just proves that spirituality and eventually the study of spirits is what will lead to the answers. So if you are enjoying this content and feel it, then have a discussion. Let's have a discussion in the comment section below. Thank you. Hi, I hope you're enjoying the videos. I'm not going to beg or persist or force you to subscribe or like the channel, but if you feel the content is worth it, then reward it as such. Thank you so much and have a great day.